Hi guys, Goffy here and welcome back to the channel. I missed last week's video and I didn't really let you guys know what I was doing. I was away on a Welsh coastal road trip. Here's some pictures up on the screen and I can't wait to share more of this stuff with you. But for today's video, what we're going to be doing is going through my Fujifilm kit for 2023. Now since the start of this year, the gear that I use has changed an awful lot, predominantly because I've been streamlining it down to reduce the amount of gear that I have. I also find myself reviewing quite a lot of gear on this channel that I review, give you my opinions, and sometimes keep and sometimes move on. So I just wanted it to be really clear what it is that I'm actually using and why I've picked it up and why maybe I've not picked some of the alternatives. What I do want you guys to bear in mind though is that I do make money from my YouTube channel and from my photography, so all of this gear is being used in a somewhat professional sense. It is definitely overkill for everything that I do, so you definitely don't need to go out and buy this stuff to be able to do what I'm doing, because I could definitely get away with much cheaper gear, but at the same time I make money from this hobby, so at the same time I don't really want to buy cheap gear, I just want to spend what I make. So let's kick off with cameras first, because I think that's probably the most important place. So first up then is the Fujifilm X-H2S. Now this is my workhorse camera. It does everything for my YouTube channel and also all of my commercial work as well. Now the main features that I really like about this camera is the fact that it is a very, very good hybrid camera. It is as good at video as it is at photography, and my mix, both for my photography channel and my commercial work, is 50-50. I find myself doing as much video as I do photography at the moment. Now the main features that stand out for me are things like the 6.2K open gate. It's really good for things like YouTube and repurposing for vertical, but more and more I've found that doing the fitness shoots that I typically do commercially, they also want vertical video too. So being able to repurpose the 16:9 typical 4K video for their vertical stuff as well has been a big win. The other thing that stands out with this camera is the mode dial on the top. I absolutely love that I can really quickly change between things like my open gate video, my 4K 120, which also looks great, then to photography with just a change of a single mode dial has been something I've really appreciated. Again, with these fitness shoots and some of the car shoots that I do, having reliable autofocus for the first time in a Fuji camera was also a big win for me. I think the main downside with this camera for me is the fact that it doesn't really inspire me to use it. Outside of the YouTube needs and the commercial needs, I just don't really like picking it up. It's the camera that I'm a bit like, this feels a bit too much like work rather than fun, which leads us on nicely to the next camera. And that camera is the Fujifilm X Pro 2 that I have recently picked up. Now importantly, the X-H2S is better than the X Pro 2 in every single way, other than one thing, and that's the fact that I really want to pick up the X Pro 2. It's a camera that, due to its design and its form factor, actually makes me want to use it. So I really enjoy having this other camera that just feels a bit more detached from maybe the work life that this camera, the X-H2S, leads me down. Now I think the main downside with the X Pro 2 is the fact that in some areas it is starting to show its age. Things like autofocus isn't the best, and I really look forward to an X Pro 4. And I hope on the X Pro 4 they give it a tilt screen. I don't want the reverse flippy screen of the X Pro 3, just give me a tilt screen like on the X-T5 at the minute. That would be great. Now the third camera is the Fuji X100V. However, I don't really consider this camera part of my kit anymore, partly because it's been stolen away by my girlfriend, and because she's using it on the day trips, it's not really up for me to use anymore. But importantly, do you know what? I don't miss it. And that might be a little bit controversial, and I'm going to do a whole video on why I don't miss the X100V soon. But at the end of the day, the things that make that camera unique, things like the leaf shutter and the built-in ND, do you know what? I just don't get that much use out of, and the X Pro 2 for me is actually the better choice. But I'm going to do a little bit more of a detailed video on that soon. But if it was up to me, my X100V right now would have been sold weeks ago, because the premiums that they're selling for now are just stupid, and I would take advantage of that price increase at the minute, because as soon as the new one comes out, when it comes out, if it comes out, then premiums are just going to disappear. And right now, for me, they are so overpriced for what they are. Now I think this moves us on to lenses then, and let's kick off with primes. Now my favourite Fujifilm lens at the minute is the 33mm f1.4. Absolutely love this lens. I don't really have any complaints about it at all. Some people say it's a little bit too big. Do you know what? I don't mind that it's a little bit bigger. It still feels good on the X Pro 2 and the X-H2S. And I love the fact that it kind of gives that full frame look. There's no chance that I'm going to be giving these images to clients and they're going to be saying, oh, it looks like there's not enough background separation, because this lens offers enough of it for me. And then secondly, completely conversely to that one, we have the 18mm f2. And to be honest with you, it's pretty rubbish in every way other than optically, but I don't really need to use this in a professional setting. I'm only really using this on my X Pro 2, and I love the small compact form factor that it gives that camera. I've done a video on it explaining why it needs to be updated, and I really hope Fuji update it in the future. Maybe, as some people pointed out on that video, if they were to bring out an X Pro 4, maybe they would update this lens similar to how they did the 27mm. So from a full frame equivalent point of view, the 18mm is a 28 and the 33mm is a 50, so I'm running like a 28 and 50mm setup. Now I'm going to quickly interrupt this video whilst I'm editing to just remind you guys that lots of you watch my videos more than once, but you don't subscribe. And if that is you, then please consider subscribing. Back to the video. And the reason I don't need to use that 18mm f2 professionally is because when it comes to my professional work, the lens that I use for like 95% of it is the 16 to 55mm f2.8 Fuji. Now my only real gripe with this lens is its size, because it is pretty big and heavy for a crop sensor lens. But performance wise, honestly, I have nothing to complain about. I find I use it at the long end quite a lot for portraits, and f2.8 at 55mm offers you a pretty good level of background separation. I also use it for all of my video content. Even though it doesn't have optical stabilization, the IBIS in the X-H2S is more than good enough to be able to get rid of all of those micro jitters. It's a lens that I do have a bit of a love-hate relationship with because of its size. Now, I did do a video on it recently explaining this in a bit more detail, but I think importantly for me, when it comes to professional stuff, I don't mind that it's heavy. The time that I have a bit of an issue with the weight is when I'm making my YouTube videos, because I'll have like my X Pro 2 and a lens on show in the video and you guys see that, but at the same time I'm having to lug around the X-H2S and one of the heaviest Fuji lenses that they make. Then lastly, the other zoom lens that I use is the 70 to 300mm. You don't see too much of it on the channel, but I absolutely love doing some wildlife photography, and this is the lens for me. The main reason is in the past I've had big heavy zoom lenses, and because they're so big and heavy, they just never leave the house. But this 70 to 300 is so small and compact. Being able to have that much range in such a small compact area is so good, and it means I can slip it into my camera bag and not really realise that I'm carrying it. And for me, that is super important. Otherwise, like the other zoom lenses, it would just never leave the house. Now in terms of leftovers, there is a couple lenses that I still own that I'll quickly update you on. I have the 23mm f2. I don't really consider it as part of my kit, but the reason I still own it is because it's really good for size comparisons in videos. Most of you guys have seen a 23mm f2, so if I do a little size comparison with it, it really helps people see how big the lens is. I sometimes still use it on the X Pro 2 for a bit of fun, but I wouldn't consider it part of my kit. The other lens that I still own at the minute is that Viltrox 27mm f1.2 that you saw a couple videos ago. I've decided ultimately that lens is going to be sold or given away because I'm just going to use the 33mm f1.4. As good as that lens is, the size of it I think is enough of a put off for me to use the Fuji that I already own. If I didn't already have the 33mm f1.4, it would be a serious contender because of how much cheaper that it is. The other lens that I still own is the 16mm f2.8. I bought that lens thinking that I'd be able to use that instead of the 18mm f2. Turns out the 16mm just is a little bit too wide for me. It has a little bit too much distortion that I just can't get used to using it, so that lens is also going to be sold. And I think that covers every lens that I own at the minute for the Fuji system. And next up, let's talk about bags. And when it comes to bags, first up I have the Lowepro Pro Tactic AW352. That is the rucksack that I use, but to be honest with you, I only really use this rucksack to store my gear in. So this houses all of the Fuji gear that we've spoken about so far, and I will pack my stuff into this bag, and if I'm going on like a trip somewhere, this bag will come with me to the hotel, but it typically will never leave the hotel. Now what I then do is I'll take out the gear that I need on a day trip and put it into my Billingham Hadley Small, and this is the bag that comes out with me every single place I go, and at this point I think this bag is 5 or 6 years old and it still looks brand new. The bag that I'm using is the synthetic version. When you buy them you get a choice, it's like a natural one or a synthetic one. I went synthetic and yeah, it doesn't look like it's aged at all, and I literally mean it. I use this bag at least once or twice a week for 5 years and it looks brand new. So that is like my typical gear setup then. I pack everything into the Lowepro bag and I use that to store my gear and to transport it to places, but when it actually comes to a day trip, all I take out with me is that Billingham Hadley, and if it doesn't fit in this bag, it's basically just not part of my kit. Next up then, let's quickly talk accessories. When it comes to audio, I use the Rode Video Micro. I think that's what it's called, up on the screen now. It is the cheapest mic that Rode make, and to be honest with you, it has carried this YouTube channel for longer than it should have done, and I have now updated to the DJI mics. However, I made one video with them DJI mics and it went completely wrong, so I do need to learn how to use them before they fully integrate into this YouTube channel. The other really extravagant purchase that I've made from an accessory point of view, and I somewhat regret it at times, was the Peak Design carbon fiber tripod. Now, it's a very, very expensive tripod, but I absolutely resent tripods. I hate them. I'll do everything I can to not take one with me, so I came to the conclusion that if I was to fit a tripod into my collection, it was going to have to be as small and lightweight as I could make it, or ultimately, I would just never use it. So there we have it then. That is all of the Fuji gear and kind of my setup that I am using in 2023. I feel so much better for having streamlined out all of the gear that I use. I was honestly getting this like decision paralysis in the past where every time I went on a trip, I didn't know what gear to take with me, and it was causing me, to be honest, a little bit of unneeded stress when packing. Having streamlined down my gear, I honestly feel so much happier. And at this point, I've got what, 2 cameras, 4 lenses, and some accessories, and that is about it. I do still own some of my Leica stuff. I use that for fun more than anything else. I'm not really sure how that's gonna last or sit at the minute. I feel like it's so expensive for the amount of time I use it, but it's also really hard to let go. If you've enjoyed this video though, guys, please do not forget to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions about any of the gear that I'm using or why I'm using it, then let me know down in the comments and I'll do my best to get back to you. But thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.